Katrina McPherson.
Yes,
right. At CINEDANS with your new piece. What's it called and who's it by?
So the film that we're presenting at CINEDANS this year is called There Is a Place. And it's a new film that's a collaboration between myself, Simon Files and Jijia. Jijia is a Tibetan Chinese choreographer and dancer. He's described as China's hottest choreographer, and he's one of a generation that's really developing contemporary dance within China. He works for the three main Chinese contemporary dance companies, CCDC in Hong Kong, the Guangzhou Modern Dance Company, and also LDTX in Beijing. The project was initiated by Raymond Wong, who's the director of the International Jumping Frames Dance Video Festival in Hong Kong. And he met with Karen Wood, who was the artistic director of Dance House in Glasgow, and said that he would like to commission a Scottish filmmaker to work with Jijia to make a new film for their festival, to premiere at their festival. Karen Wood thought of myself and Simon and contacted us. The idea was that we would spend some development time with Jijia, that he would come to Scotland and work with us in Scotland, and we invited him to come to where we live in the Scottish Highlands. And the idea was we would spend a little bit of time getting to know each other, with the idea of developing a project to film later in the summer. But when I looked at the budget and also the time constraints, both of myself and Simon, but also Jijia, who's a very busy choreographer, I realised that actually we had to grab the opportunity when he came to us to actually shoot the film.
Where was it shot?
Yeah. There Is a Place was shot in our local village hall in the village of Furness in Scotland. It's virtually unused. It's used for a bit of badminton. It has a quality about it that I really, really like. When Samba, as we call him, came to Scotland, he arrived from Beijing to where we live, and there was an enormous culture shock for him, because basically we live where there are no people. And it kind of in a way just sort of took him out of his life and placed him in our world, really, and in this natural environment. But I think the thing that we could both hold on to is that we both have a lot of experience working with improvisation. He was the recipient of a Rolex award to go and work and be mentored by William Forsyth. And he was there with his company, with Forsyth's company, for 2 years. And I think that's had an enormous influence and effect on the way that he makes work. I showed him the space, and to begin with he was a little bit like, not sure. And then I took him back to our house and showed him some footage that I'd shot in the space with Kirsty Simpson and Simon Ellis the previous year. And he also could see that has an aesthetic that he felt he could work with. The other part of our discussion was really about place and about belonging. And because he comes from Tibet, he has a relationship obviously with mountains. And we talked about that, and how even when you are away from a place, it can also exist within you. He was with us for about 5 days, and having shown him the interior space that I thought we could work in, we then spent a little bit of time driving around the local environment that we live in, which is moorland and hills. And we both kind of decided we wanted to find a space. We thought actually initially we were looking for like a little old cottage or something that we could almost make like his house, and sort of work with that idea, maybe interior, exterior. But when we tried that, it all felt a little bit too literal. And as we were driving around, we saw a field that I know quite well in the middle of the moor, which at that time of year, which is May in Scotland, is incredibly green. And also from that field you can see the mountains. So we went to that field, chased away unintentionally a big pile of sheep, and Samba did an improvisation there. We were able to go to this space, this exterior space, and within a very short period of time, because it was very cold and windy, we could gather the images that we needed. And we actually worked in a very similar way in the space. We spent one morning in the interior space, kind of playing around a bit, looking at what happened to the light when the sun came in and out, moving the chairs about, and just sort of thinking about a few things. And then we basically went the next day and shot for 4 hours. Preparation was really to make sure he had the right clothes on, and that was it really. The lighting is very minimal, and you see in the film there's these strip lights that kind of create and sort of create partly this sort of space above his head. And that was the sort of lighting, was that we moved one bulb from one end of the room to the other end of the room by climbing on all sorts of chairs and tables and things, because I didn't have an assistant or anything. It was just literally him and I in a space. And you know, there's a part of me that thinks, okay, so we didn't have the budget to get, you know, me a crew and lighting and grip equipment and things. But I also slightly question whether we would have got the same film had we had those things. Because for me, for all its kind of minimal look, what this film has is this extraordinary performance by Jijia. And that performance was, you know, the only person that witnessed that performance was me and my camera. And I think it would be very different if there was another 10 people behind me. And also that we were, you know, fiddling around with lights and having to get things in the right place, and he had to be in a specific bit because we wanted the light to do this and that. There's a kind of freedom that comes with this almost kind of guerrilla style of making work. It's a constant tussle thinking about that, you know, and that's where I'm at now. There's part of me thinking, yeah, okay, so what have we lost through having this very kind of, I guess, kind of dogma style of making films? But to me, I keep on going back to the fact that what we gain is this incredible performance, and it's a very spontaneous performance. There's, although people often find it very hard to believe, he is improvising. It's unrepeatable what he's doing. He never ever, we did no second takes. There was no me saying, oh, actually, do you think you could try that again? Because I know as soon as I do that, it's not going to work. Because I'm, you know, there isn't that instant, spontaneous creating in the moment coming from both of us.
And that intimacy.
You know, of knowing. And that's where I get very excited, because for me, that's what the camera can do, is it can witness these unique moments that happen and then take them and make them, you know, make them available to many other people to see. It's completely visceral, and it's also totally precious because it's unrepeatable. You know, it's not like we've planned various shots and we can go, okay, well, we'll just try the wide shot from over here again when you go down to the floor, you know, see if we can get it a bit better. There is none of that. It's like, okay, you know, and you can see, if you watch it, you can see there's moments where he's just checking out what I'm doing, you know. So I know he's thinking as much about the framing as I'm thinking about the framing. And I think, again, that makes me very excited, because I think then it's really a collaboration between the two medium. It's not me coming along and just kind of objectifying the dance. It's actually an interaction between the two media. And that's way before you even start thinking about the editing, which obviously has an enormous effect on people's experience of the work. I also find that way of working, you can't really work for very long. It's incredibly demanding for a performer to be kind of on like that. So the next stage of the process was that Samba and I sat in the edit suite together and looked at the rushes. What made me feel kind of confident that the collaboration was going to work was that when we started to look at the rushes, we both loved the same moments, but we were both like, that's the moment, which is how Simon and I have always been as well. And it kind of makes me think, well, we're kind of aiming at the same thing, even if it's almost like an unspoken.
You've got this unspoken dialogue between the two of you. What are you going for? What is your eye attracted to the most, and how do you get and how do you connect to that shot? How do you connect to that movement? It's probably an intuitive thing that you've developed over the years.
It's partly about trying to, in the moment, connect with what is happening in the movement and what maybe I see at that moment as being the important aspect of that movement, or the element of the movement that captures my imagination. And so I'm sort of drawn to that. And in a sense, that can be something that's a little bit decided beforehand, you know. So we might say, okay, so Samba's saying, okay, I'm going to try something on the tabletop. So I know that probably I'm going to be looking at the tabletop and his torso and so, but not necessarily, because I could also look at that and see that actually what's happening with his legs under the table is just as interesting, and that can be a kind of evolution of something as it goes on. You know, it's difficult to sort of take away the kind of years of looking at movement through a frame, and that's what I mean about, using improvisation because I know that he has a very similar experience. You know, he has many years of experience of improvising, so we both bring that to the project and to the moment. But you know, those many years included many years of working with set choreography and very particular framing and looking, you know, what works, what makes me feel like, oh yeah, you know, that's reading, or it's got energy, or it's got an aesthetic and a frame, you know. So years and years of looking at that, then that in a sense is internalized and can happen absolutely in the moment, you know. But it's also, in a sense, for me, always having half an eye, or more than that, you know, 3/4 of a brain on the fact of the editing. So I'm always thinking about how this is going to edit. So I'm always sort of jumping ahead in my head, thinking, okay, so this is working now, I've got a wide shot and he's moving away from me. So now I have to start thinking about something closer and more bound, or, you know, so I'm always thinking about the fact that in the edit suite we need to have contrasting shots, different textures, different rhythms, different speeds, different sizes, very basically, of shot to edit together, you know. So it really, you know, it's about not getting caught up in, oh, that looks really nice, oh, do more of that, do more of that. I mean, this, you know, that's always what's happening in my head, as I'm thinking, okay, we've got some of that, what are we going to do now that is different from that, so that we have a way to edit? Because there's no point in me going to Simon with a whole load of rushes all look the same, basically.